Can you see if there are people there? Okay. So I'll just start. If you can put me to share the screen, I'd like to do that. Okay. Okay. So let's. Okay. Um, my name's Neil Kummer. I'm the CEO of Kef International. I started this business back in 1979. I made Aliyah in 1978. In 79, they changed the laws, so you had to bring only from your country of origin and only 3 shipments. So it made it a lot more difficult than having unlimited shipments from any country. So I opened this business. For the first 15 years, it was just appliances, since appliances were a really big deal. American appliances cost and still cost almost 3 times as much. In some cases, the taxes were over 200% for refrigerators. And after 15 years, they brought the taxes down to nothing, basically, down to 18%. So now 17, now 18. And so then we pivoted into shipping, relocations, and at the same time, we also were doing some real estate. It was called at the time Lincoln Realty because I was on Lincoln Street in Jerusalem. And so in this presentation, we're going to go through everything you need to know about Aliya Shipping, from the technical side of things to the more nuanced ideas about what's worth bringing and how you're going to fit it in your house, and different ways of paying for it, and insurance, customs clearing, what to expect at pickup, what to expect at delivery, all the different details. We already have a few of these podcasts, webinars on our website, but this is the last one we've done for a while. So we're just going to start right in. If Manjit will show me the text, then I will begin presenting it. Okay, so maybe I can use the mouse also. Yeah. So the first challenge. Let me just actually show by way of introduction what these bright colored boxes are, and they're actually called boxes in colloquially. These are all 40-foot containers, and they're the larger of the shipping containers. There's also 20-foot containers, which are half that size, and there are 40-foot high cube containers, which are 10% higher. So the overall volume is 2,200 cubic feet instead of 2,000, although the measure is imprecise because actually, if you were to pour water into one of these things, it would hold something like 2,500 cubic feet. But it's assumed that when you pack things and you load them, that's gonna take up a lot of the space. So we usually assume that a 40-foot container like this takes up or can hold 2,000 cubic feet, and a smaller one 1,000 cubic feet. We'll go later into what that means in terms of actual furniture and household goods. The first challenge is in finding a shipper is finding one that is accustomed to giving solid support and service from beginning to end. Another thing to look out for is if the same person or small set of people, like 1 or 2 people, are going to be accompanying you through the whole process, so you're familiar with and you have good communication, hopefully, with the same person all the way through, from the choosing and deciding what you're going to ship to getting it into your house in Israel, or if you're shipping out of Israel to wherever you're shipping to. Clear, complete quotes. That means that everything is presented in such a way that you know what to expect. You also know what's unexpected, what's possible but unexpected. Okay. Also, you want to be able to find a shipper that's going to give you timely updates and accurate information as much as possible. Okay. So the first stage is education. It's meaning read through our website and read through our recommendations. That'll give you some indication of what to expect. And there's every Israel-based shipper is going to have an American counterpart, not of the same name. And every American-based shipper is going to have an Israel-based counterpart, also not of the same name. So you can expect that they're going to be, even though your contract is with one company, hopefully an Israel-based company, so that if, God forbid, there's any problems, then you can deal with it in situ, on location. But in either event, if you have an American-based company, you're going to be dealing with an Israel-based company at some point. And if you have an Israel-based company, you're going to be dealing with an American company at some point. So you want a full breakdown of all the possible, likely, unlikely charges, but possible. And in terms of timing, of course, it's better to, now there's no time like the present to educate yourself about what it is that's possible and what it is you want to do, what you want to bring. You don't want to get into a situation where you regret leaving your heirloom goods behind because you thought they wouldn't fit, or conversely, you don't want to get in a situation where you've brought in so much stuff and you're moving into a tiny apartment somewhere, nothing will fit, and you're just going to pay endless storage. So it requires some sort of deliberation, and you could use AI to help you get a sense of what's worth bringing. In general, things are much more expensive in Israel. There are fewer sales, so high-quality stuff is much more expensive. For furniture and most household goods, it's like 2.25 times more expensive in Israel than in North America. For American appliances, as I said, it's over 3 times usually. For European appliances, it's best simply to buy them in Israel. No need to ship them in from elsewhere. There are some American appliances that are available in 220. We brought in a big refrigerator and use it on a transformer. You can also bring in big appliances, ovens, and not washers and dryers, because those have a lot of moving parts, but things like refrigerators and ovens you can bring in if you love your appliance in America and use it on a transformer. Okay, taxes. The big deal, as I said earlier, on American appliances was that the taxes used to be very, very high, in some cases over 200%, and now they're down to almost nothing, just to 18%. So there's no great shakes if you miss your opportunity. But if you're already paying to ship an appliance, or to make a shipment, then it's certainly worthwhile to consider, if you love the American washing machines and dryers, which are much bigger and much quicker than the European counterparts, then you might consider bringing those. Refrigerators also, you can bring in, if you have even a big Sub-Zero, you can attach that with a transformer, which we know people who've done that and have had transformers on their Sub-Zeros for 20 plus years. And why does this keep flipping around? I don't know. Okay, so taxes. The big deal about new immigrants and returning minors, meaning somebody who grew up here and then left and came back, or returning residents, is that many items, almost everything, is tax-free. And that includes pretty much everything you can imagine, except for building supplies and more than one of a certain appliance, or more than 3 TV or computers. Everything else is, also personal quantities of food, whiskey, and 1 gas barbecue. You no longer have to get a special license to bring in a gas barbecue. You cannot bring in, under any circumstances, well, under some circumstances you can, but it's not worth the trouble in most cases, weapons, seeds, electric bikes and scooters. Those are red flags. And we've had shipments, large shipments taken apart just to get the seeds out. And electric bikes and scooters, they X-ray sometimes, not often, but especially with returning residents, they're capable of X-raying the shipment to see if they have anything that remotely resembles a scooter or an electric bike. And not that it would be so easy to tell the difference, but that's what they're looking out for. So you have, as I mentioned, all the way back from 1979, you have only 3 shipments, 3 tax-free shipments, and only 3 years. So that means you can't duplicate things. I mean, you could bring in a sofa in one shipment, a sofa in another shipment, but you can't bring in more than one of the same appliance unless it's a TV or a computer. Returning residents have only 2 shipments and 9 months from the time they take on that status. Israelis, if they're not returning, if they've not been out of the country for more than 2 years, they have no tax privileges, so they're paying full taxes, which is most often around 30%, including 31%, 32%, including VAT and the sales or luxury tax. So that's what you're saving by bringing in a tax-free shipment. Tourists are in the same situation, with the exception of temporarily bringing in a car that you have to take out after 6 months and leave out of the country for 6 months. Ship it to Cyprus, bring it back in. Seems like a hassle. Students, on the other hand, have no rights on anything except a car, as long as they maintain their student status in an institute of higher learning, which could be a yeshiva gvua, or it could be a university. They have a car free of taxes, completely free of taxes, which is a privilege that's only granted to people who have full disability and otherwise. And so but they have to maintain their student status, or otherwise they have to ship the car out. And maybe after a long while they get away with paying taxes. Things that you can't bring in, weeding supplies. I think it meant to say building supplies. Building supplies like tiles or plumbing fixtures, those are taxable. Again, only about 30%. So if you decided that you want American plumbing rather than Israeli plumbing, you can bring it in and pay taxes. Although we've had instances where people brought in a whole house, like a kit even, to build a house, including plumbing, including electrical and tiles and everything, and they paid no taxes. So there was in the past, and there may be like some sort of a echo of a thing where if you bring in a whole house, like a kit for a house, that you don't pay taxes. Okay. So let's move on. Volume, usually measured for import in cubic feet. For export from Israel, it's measured in cubic meters, is the main cost factor. And it's how much space is taken up in either in your container or by your if you have less than a container, it's packed on wood or in wood, and the amount of space that it takes up is the billable volume. Oftentimes, contracts are based on an estimated volume and a minimum billable volume, above which the rate is much lower than what it would be pro rata if you divided the total volume into the total price. So it's again, it's a minimum billable volume along with a minimal additional volume. Additional cost per volume. But it's not insignificant. It's just not nearly as much as the pro rata price would be. So all over North America, except for the Midwest, where the significant factor is weight, everywhere else it's cubic feet, and there is a little weight factor that goes into the price, just in terms of port fees above 1,000, 2,200 pounds, it's one rate, and then to the above 4,400 pounds is another weight, but it's not significant in the total picture. The way pricing works is there. The more you ship, the cheaper it becomes. So if you ship double the amount, if you let's say, just for sake of estimate, let's say you're paying $8,000 for a 20-foot container holding 1,000 cubic feet, and then you decide to ship twice as much. It's not going to cost 8,000. It's going to cost, or it's not going to cost 16. It's going to cost 12,000. So it's not double the price. It's only 50% more. You can also, it may be that even if you're shipping a container load, it may be you're not going to fill the container, and it may be that your contract will be for a billable volume within the container. So though you won't be paying more for the container itself, you will be paying more for the packed volume. So it may be that your contract has a minimum billable volume in a 40-foot container of 1,500 cubic feet. And if you go up to 1,700, again, you'll pay some incremental additional cost. Yeah. So let's go on to the next one. Types of shipments. So there are two main types of shipments. One is a full container. It's not necessarily full, but it's called a full container because you have access to the whole container. Now, sometimes the movers show up and they say, yeah, it's all your container. You can fill it up. But if your contract says that you're really only paying for 1,500 cubic feet, then if you fill it up, you'll be paying for an additional 500 cubic feet of packing and loading and unloading, which could work out to be, could be $5 a cubic foot. It could be more. So it's not nothing, but it's again, incrementally, it's much less than you've paid up until then for the first 1,500 cubic feet. Advantages of a container are that it's sealed. It's usually space permitting. Like if you're not living on a top of a mountain in Vermont and you're not living in Manhattan where a container can't get close enough, if it's a relatively normal, accessible home, then the container is loaded and sealed at your home and with a lock, and it's not opened unless there's a customs inspection, which is quite unusual. It's not opened until it gets to your home destination, if you're going to Israel, if you're going to North America, wherever. So that's added security. So the chance of something being lost is almost nil, unless, as sometimes has happened, people had their shipments unloaded on a sidewalk and had multiple destinations, so things could get lost in a situation like that. But generally, it's far more secure. So once it's packed and loaded and sealed, then it goes directly within usually the same day to the port. Sometimes it doesn't get onto a ship right away. It could take up to a week or more, depending on the sailing, to get onto a ship. But it's not going to be open and loaded with other people's goods. And that's something also to be wary of. There are some shippers, not to say bad things about competitors, but there are some shippers who, without asking permission and without worrying about concerning themselves with the law, we know that because we actually did clearing and delivery for them. They said, "Oh, just deliver this stuff to this parking lot, and then deliver it to the main customer." So you have to be wary of that. So if you know your shipment is sealed and locked, and there's no inspection, then there's no reason for a container to be arrive unsealed. And it's a good idea to have like what we try to do is to have the truckers call the people down and witness the breaking of the seal. Again, a full container is not necessarily full, and you're paying for a certain volume. It could be like for smaller containers. Let's say for a 20-foot container, it's often the case that the container is just a flat fee, and it includes as much as you can fill it with. Although even sometimes, if some people are shipping considerably less than a full container but still want to ship in an exclusive container, so those people, it's not going to be they'll have a flat rate oftentimes, or they can have pay for again a minimum billable volume. So that's one way of shipping. The other way of shipping is called an LCL, less than a container load. And that means in the same way that people come to your house and pack stuff up, and then in this case, instead of packing it and loading it onto a container or into a crate at your home, it's brought back to our warehouse, our agent's warehouse, and then it's either crated or in most cases it's palletized. In the Midwest and the West Coast, it's oftentimes crated into a big crate, which does waste more space, but it's more secure as well. And on the East Coast, and including the Florida, it's oftentimes palletized, meaning it's bound with those metal straps to a wooden platform and loaded high as it can be, and shipped like that. So you can have, say, 8 of those, or even more, depending on the size of the pallet, loaded into a big container. So the reason why that's going to possibly take, and usually takes more time, is because that has to be combined with several other shipments into the same container. Now, because it's not an exclusive container, it has to be emptied at the port, and each pallet is designated as belonging to whoever it belongs to, and that has each group of pallets belong to a certain person, and that's a separate set of documents, separate customs clearing, separate delivery. Again, sometimes people share with other people, it's not legal. People do it. It has risks of its own. We have a whole page devoted to that on our website. Things can happen like somebody, your friend, could be shipping contraband and not tell you, or taxable items, or you could have some sort of a situation where you've decided not to take delivery of your goods for several weeks or months or even longer, and your hitchhiker friend, or if you're the hitchhiker, will be stuck waiting for you to take possession of your goods. Which, we've even had somebody who actually shipped the stuff all the way back. They didn't even open it; they just shipped it back. One guy was trying to bring in his dogs, and he got so frustrated with how difficult it was to bring in 3 dogs that he just said, send it back. And another woman came single, and by the time the shipment arrived here, she had found her beshert, her match or mate, back in America, and she said, "Ship it back. I'm living in America." So it's a tricky thing to share with someone, or to ask to share with someone. And also there's issues about pricing, like how do you decide the price? Is it prorated? Is it proportional? Does it include all the one-time fees or part of the one-time fees? So it's a tricky thing. People do it, but it's tricky, and it's not legal. Okay, so let's go back into the full container. Again, full containers are most often used for much larger shipments, although from time to time people will say, I have my stuff, I do not want it mixed with anybody else's stuff, I want an exclusive container, even if it adds some thousands of dollars to my price, and I want it to come quickly, I want it to be predictable, when it's going to come, more or less, and that's that. So even if it's going to be 90% empty, that's what I want, because I don't want it mixed with anybody else's stuff. If you do ship a full or close to a full, or even anything larger than a 20-foot container, let's say even anything larger than 700 cubic feet, then it's going to be cheaper per cubic foot to ship an exclusive container. When it gets here, it comes quite a bit quicker because there's no mixing it with other people's stuff and waiting for other people to fill the container. So it comes quite a bit quicker. And then when it hits Israel, it only has 2 to 4 days, depending on which port it comes into, of free storage. So oftentimes you can expect a good few days of storage charges, which are usually somewhere in the range of $30 to $50 a day. Um, and then it's brought to your house, um, unless um, unless you decide to store it, in which case you could store it in the container, but that would be very expensive because there's rental that you would pay on the container. Or you could have it transferred to a storage container, which is quite reasonable. Um, but again, some people say, like, I don't want my stuff moved around at all, and so I'm going to pay for this. Like, and it's going on a ascending price. I'm going to pay more and more each day to have it stored individually, but that's too bad. That's what I want to do because they don't want their goods inspected or gone through by anybody else. When you have a larger space, it's easier to pack it efficiently because you can play around with the space. You can move this over that and this over, and you can get it tightly packed. And we've had people who've one customer passed away recently who made the guys repack his container over and over because he had a clear idea of exactly how things should go. That's not really going to happen anymore. It was a one-time thing. It's never going to happen again. But it's just to say that it can be packed more efficiently. Because when you're packing into a smaller space, so there's a limited number of ways that you can distribute the items, especially if they're irregularly shaped, then it's going to be less efficient and more expensive per cubic foot to ship in a LCL, in a combined container. Okay, one sec. So here, pictures closer up of 40-foot and 20-foot containers. There's also a 10% higher one, and that usually it's said to hold 2,200 cubic feet, and a 20-foot container is said to hold 1,000 cubic feet. Again, that's packed volume. So if you were to be built, if you were able to do a close-up here, you would see that it lists something like 2,356 cubic feet, which is the volume of water or some whatever feathers that you'd be able to put in there. But practically speaking, because things are not completely fluid, it only can hold 1,000 cubic feet. Okay. Again, the consolidations are for much smaller shipments, although some people have chosen LCLs when they want to store their goods for a long time, because whereas with a container, you have to ship it, you have to either bring the whole thing to a private storage, or you have to leave it at the port if you want it untampered with in its own container, which would be frightfully expensive, or you can move it to a storage container and then have that delivered. So those are cheaper ways. But if you also don't want your goods tampered with and you want to store for a long time, even, let's say, without clearing customs, then you might choose to go with a set of consolidations, like a group of either crates or pallets. So again, it's considerably more expensive per cubic foot, but the minimums are much lower. So whereas a container is going to cost $8,000 and more, you can get away with $3,000 on the East Coast for $250 for a quarter of a container. So it's much cheaper overall, but more expensive per cubic foot. Shared containers, just like they're called groupages on the other side, on the loading side, they're grouped together with several other people's goods, and you have to wait until that happens. So on the receiving side, the container is unloaded, but it's still protected. All of these crates or pallets are sealed. They're sealed in plastic with metal bands, and the crates, of course, are in wood. But it does add 15 to 20% to the overall volume, to the billable volume, because both because it's it's less efficiently packed, but also simply because of the amount of dead space that there's going to be. And there's always going to be dead space. Sometimes it's used strategically, like in a full container, people will put in empty boxes, and they'll say when they when they receive the goods, they'll say, "Wait a second, I don't want to pay for empty boxes." But it could be that that empty box was supporting a whole wall of goods, and without which it wouldn't have been able to stand. So that's one thing. The other thing is when there's a direct relation between how much space something takes up, with packing, and how safe it is. Like we once used this, like Rolls-Royce packers in Canada, and it was the customer said like there was so much wasted space. Yep, and it was it was insured for $400,000, and there was not even a hint of damage. So that's just the way it is. If you want ultimate protection, then space is it's going to be less efficiently packed, apparently less efficiently packed. Okay, and you understand why it's slower and less certain timing, both because because it has to be consolidated, and because it's probably not. It might not go on a Zim boat. The Zim boat is the Israeli line, which is the most direct of the sailings from North America, and there are other Chinese shipments that are much slower because they're what's called transshipments, meaning that they hit other ports on the way and then unload their goods and then reload them to the next boat coming. So it's cheaper, and it's much less predictable and slower. Okay. So just like we showed the containers, so here's what pallets look like. In a real pallet, this is I guess an AI pallet. Real pallets will be much higher and wider, and there'll be plastic all around it, and in most cases there'll be there'll be irregular shapes in there, and there'll be plastic on it, and then there'll be metal bands. So it's very secure, and even more secure, of course, is a lift van, which adds money, a couple $100 just for the lift van, but also because it's a confined space, it's harder to maximize the efficiency of the packing. Okay. Accurate volume estimates. So this is always an issue, because not only because people change their mind about what they want to ship, but because it's a difficult task to not only estimate what volume an item takes up, but how it can be combined with other items to be packed efficiently, and also while following all the other rules, like don't put something heavy on top of something delicate, or don't put something heavy on top of something light, and build walls that don't fall over. So for that reason, even when goods are well organized, it's difficult to get accurate volume estimates. Sometimes they can be, wildly off, but that's usually because because there's a great difference. Let's say one spouse oversees the volume estimating, and another spouse oversees the actual packing, and they haven't fully communicated, what it is that they intend to bring. So there can be wildly different groups of items. In general, if you're not shipping absolutely everything, you want to have an A and B priority list. So the A is the absolute must go, and the B is the stuff that if there's room, then you're going to ship that stuff. And a good thing to do with if you have B items is to hide them, because packers are not, they're not brain surgeons, and I mean, not to degrade the professionalism, but if they see something it's like a seafood diet. If they see something, they're going to tend to pack it. So you kind of want to keep the B priority list goods out of reach, and you don't even want to mention them, because they're also not great at parsing the spoken word. Um, so if you say, "Oh, I hope I can fit my whatever," and then they won't hear the introduction, or they'll say, "Oh, we'll fit it," and they'll run over to that secondary item and put it right in right away, and then you may end up having no room for your A list because you just happen to mention things on the B list. So you have to be careful about even presenting it in words to the packers. It's, of course, you want it once the A list is completely packed and loaded, then you can. Now, what makes this additionally more tricky is that if you have a container, the goods are not loaded immediately. First they're packed, and then they're loaded. So it's a bit of a trick to decide exactly how much stuff you can pack that's going to fit. Yeah. So, and you don't want to rely on the movers to give you a volume estimate in real time. You want to have calculated, you want to consult with us over and over again to review the volume estimate, make sure it's complete, make sure things are accurately presented, and that the possible list is listed as a possible list, because you don't want to have a volume estimate that doesn't correspond with the actual goods that you want to ship. So that's really important that you pay good attention to the volume estimate and oftentimes these are done digitally and remotely, which adds to the challenge. But they still are pretty good, sometimes very good. Things you can do to effectuate the best, the most accuracy is if your goods are organized. If you have a pile or a shelf of stuff that's mixed, things that you want to take and things you want to leave, not only is that going to delay the packing, but it's going to completely confuse the estimator, because he's not going to be able to say, whoa, just like, oh, this fraction of this part of the wall unit, and this part is not going, and this part is going. So organized goods are worthwhile and important at every stage, especially before the volume estimators come or see your goods. And you want to review the volume estimate carefully to make sure that he's gotten everything. Something that was out on the porch that you forgot to mention, so mention it later even. And not to make decisions at the last minute. If the movers, as happens sometimes, we did an export for somebody recently who was doing, she was just packing up the equivalent of half of a desk. But that half of a desk included papers for her whole life. And she was in America, and she agreed to pay something extra to have the packers review everything with her. But it went a little bit nuts, and she ended up spending 8 hours of time with 2 packers to review everything. And that, of course, added cost. And that's an uncommon thing. But in any case, you do not want to have last-minute sorting, and you do not want the B list, the secondary list, to be visible or even mentioned until the A list is taken care of. Okay, storage. In general, of course, the cheapest thing to do is to ship directly. Don't store anything, even though you do have 28 free days for a less than container load, and 2 to 4 free days for a full container. Storage has a way of growing, and so that's another reason to carefully choose what you're sending, so that you don't end up, unless you like it. Some people like storage, and so you don't end up storing things for weeks and months and years. that you may never want. It's a, so that's a difficult process, but it's worth doing well. Um, you can store it at origin, meaning, let's say in New York or Florida or wherever it is, you can store all or part of your shipment until you're ready for it. Um, I don't recommend. We had one customer who said, well, we're going to go for a year, see if the kids like it, and then if they like it, we'll ship over the rest of the stuff. Like that's like getting married and keeping a girlfriend on the side just in case it doesn't work out. Not a wise choice. And so you do want to plan to ship as much as possible rather than storing at origin. Storing at destination is another matter because you may decide that you're living in a temporary place for now and you're going to store part of your goods now and take delivery of part and then take delivery of the rest. In general, when you take delivery of something, that's the end of your marine insurance coverage, except if you put your goods into a monitored access storage. That means that you can't go in and at your leisure, at your will, take stuff out and without anybody monitoring it, because then they'll never know if the stuff arrived and just you took it away. So if you want, we can keep the key, and it's in a private storage unit, and so you'll be able to extend the marine insurance. And it's far cheaper to extend the marine insurance than it was to pay for the original voyage. So you can do that. You can do that for, there's no limit to the amount of time. It has to be approved storage. It has to be high quality storage. We have places all over Israel that we use. Still, storage is not it's not like in Kansas. There are storage units which are still high quality and waterproof and all that stuff, without proper lighting, and that's the main issue. It's not a big deal. I won't go into all the problems that are possible in storage, but in general, storage is excellent and trustworthy, and you can extend the marine insurance if you don't have access to it. So, talking about marine insurance covers you, and you're required to insure goods for their replacement value at destination. Recall that goods cost usually 2.25 times more, like for big goods, in Israel than they do in North America. So that's what you're insuring for. We have a list. We have a list of suggested multiples. If you want to go to the trouble of listing everything and insuring it for a replacement value that you come up with, the next slide is going to show that there's another way of doing it, which is far less labor intensive and far more secure, and actually costs less per dollar. It's called lump sum. All risk is what you want, meaning that it insures for damage and loss, not just for damage, not just for loss and theft. And it does require professional packing. And there's a way of, even if you pack some goods yourself, you can leave the box open and let the packers repack goods so that it's considered professionally packed, what's called CP, carrier packed, as opposed to PBO, packed by owner. So that's what you want in order to insure your goods for all risk. Otherwise, if you pack your own goods and just declare what's in them, you can insure only up to $300 and only for loss, not for damage. Okay, some of our colleagues offer, as do we, total loss, but the difference being that we recommend against it. We recommend using the money to make a list, even if it's a little bit of work, because total loss is like a lottery, all or nothing. So if half of your shipment arrives, then you get nothing. If your shipment is dumped into the ocean and not recovered, as has happened from time to time, then you get total. You've hit the jackpot, and you get the total amount. The minimum insurable value is $12 a pound. So it gives you a significant amount of coverage, but it's not the best use of your money. I just got off the phone with the head of our insurance company, and every time I get on the phone with him, he reminds me that we're his oldest customer. I think we've been with him for nearly 40 years, and he's based in LA, and unlike some other, we used to work with an Israeli-based company who was very upfront and honest, and they said the surveyor was this lovely Yemenite woman. She said, you know, since we're surveyors, and we're also the insurance company, so guess what? We have a strong interest in doing whatever we can to avoid paying claims. So you want to avoid that. You want to avoid a company where they're going to be sending out their own surveyors for damage. Okay. Now, the better alternative to making a comprehensive list of what's in your shipment, and breaking your head to estimate the replacement values, is what's called lump sum. It values the shipment at a minimum of $12 per pound. You can insure it for more than that. If you have a lot of goods that are close to $3,000, it insures every item in the shipment for up to $3,000, except for two sets of goods. Either self-packed goods. Remember that if you're not going to have your goods inspected and or repacked as necessary by the packers, you can only insure it up to $300 and only for loss. So, so this kind of insurance insures you for up to $3,000 per item, and you only have to list any self-packed boxes and any goods that are over $3,000. So if you have something that in America costs $2,500 and its replacement value is $5,000 in Israel, so then that's over $3,000, so you pay a separate premium on that. And in the case of the exceptional items, like we shipped over a $200,000, Steinway. So not only is that going to be above $3,000, but it's going to require a separate policy, and it's going to probably have a different deductible. Like it's going to, instead of being $150 or $500, it's probably going to be 3% or 5%. So, but getting back to normal things, our lump sum, it covers everything up to $3,000, and without your listing it. Now, there are some other companies that do offer lump sum at a lower ceiling, which means that everything above $1,500, you're going to have to declare, evaluate, and pay an extra premium on. So that's not it. It's the opposite of a bargain. Okay. And the alternative again is a comprehensive valued inventory, which means that you're listing everything in the shipment, and you're estimating replacement values for everything. Now, it's not as onerous as it seems, because you can group items of similar or equal value. So if you have 50 books and they're all worth $15 each, so you can insure them as a group, and everything will be insured for. But if you have many different kinds of books and some are worth $1,000 and some are worth $15, then you can't group those together. Okay. But you can, yeah. So that's much more work, and it's also the premium, the rate is higher by, I guess, 33% from below, 25% from above. So other companies that may ship may offer cheaper prices, and we're always happy to compare for you to decipher ambiguous or unclear quotes. So some things are just too good to be true. One of the main things that's done by certain people, certain shipping companies, is shipping everything, whether it should have its own container or whether not, they'll ship it together in a 40-foot high container, like the largest possible container, and it will get mixed in with other people's stuff, and the rate of loss and damages goes relative to an exclusive container or to an LCL that's palletized or crated, it goes sky high, both loss and damage. So if something's very much cheaper than the market, there's probably a good reason for it, and it's not something that you want to go for. They also would ship even smaller shipments, and like a 700 plus cubic feet should go into its own container. And they're putting it into a consolidation. And they're putting it into a consolidation without crating or palletizing it, which again means that the chances for damage or loss are much higher. Okay. The other thing that I consider to be a sign of a problem is if somebody offers total loss insurance as if it's a sensible option, a serious option, because it isn't. It's just tossing your money away. I don't think I've ever seen a total loss shipment insurance paid, so it's not a reasonable option. You could take that money and make a list, even an easy list, rather than going into excruciating detail. You could make a partial list, and as long as as long as you're insuring it for like $1, paying like a premium of $1 per cubic foot, then you're going to be okay, and you'll be able to get reasonable insurance for things, even if they're going to be less highly insured than they will be for lump sum. Okay. This is something we're doing. We have a video person working with us now, and she actually showed me a video of somebody throwing a piano. I don't know if it was a stunt or what, but this is the amazingly inexpensive shippers. What to bring, what to buy, what to ship, what to leave behind, what to buy in Israel. The main thing is to bring things or buy things that you really love, whether it's furniture or artwork or goods or that your grandmother gave you, or kitchenware that you really like, because the chance of you finding similar stuff or stuff at an equal level, unless it's like IKEA, it's called in America, is not good. So you bring stuff that you really like and that you want to have, and of course that you can fit somewhere. In general, everything can be fit into an Israeli apartment, even though there might be less free space around it. But let's say you're bringing American appliances, so you're going to want to have an appliance wall rather than pre-fixed spaces for European appliances, which won't fit American appliances. You can bring appliances that you already have and love and use a transformer, some of them. You can do it with an oven. There's a way of adapting the gas and the electricity, sometimes not completely, but mostly. You can bring in a refrigerator. We have a refrigerator, again, that we've had for 20 years on a transformer, and it works, it works just fine. And these days, also parts. It's not like in the old days where if something didn't have parts available in Israel, you wouldn't want to bring it. Nowadays, because of DHL and the post office and the internet, you can find parts for just about anything, including in Israel, to some extent. So a Vitamix also is a fancy blender that could be used with a transformer. A KitchenAid also with a transformer. The speed might be affected. If something is 50, 60 hertz, then the speed will not be affected. If it's just 60 hertz, that's the frequency of the electricity, then it will work slower. But for a machine that has such enormous power, that won't make a difference. Our KitchenAid is working on a transformer. Not terribly convenient, because we have to schlep it upstairs, but to the kitchen, but it's doable. There are still some American appliances, aside from refrigerators and ovens, that you might find desirable because they work more quickly and they're larger. Like a Speed Queen washer dryer is considered to be high quality, and it's considerably larger than European machines. European machines take like between 30 and 90 minutes, I guess, to do the wash, and they generally hold something less than an American machine. American machine, of course, takes just like 20 minutes to do a wash, and it's using mostly friction and hot water, but and even cold water. But the European machines are all about hot water and friction, so the clothes might not last as long. And you have to be careful about things like elastic in hot water. Okay, So furniture, again, is generally better quality in America, and and for much higher quality, it's going to be much more expensive here. Kitchenware is not dramatically more expensive; it's like 1.5 times the price. Um, yeah, that's it. European appliances, we recommend buying them in Israel. If you want top of the line European appliances, you can now bring them tax free from as an Oleh, as a new immigrant from Europe, and we do that as well. Um, Vehicles is kind of a hot topic because there are people who say like, don't bother, it's a big trouble. It is a big trouble. It's especially with a personal, what's called a personal import vehicle, because the insurance companies consider that the parts are harder to find. They're actually not, but that's what the insurance companies think. We have a personal import vehicle, and my son was driving it, and some truck ran into it, and the guy who owned the truck said, "Oh, well, don't worry about the insurance. We'll get all the parts." And he just, like, within a matter of a week and a half, he had found parts for this personal import vehicle and it was great. So it's an insurance issue rather than a real issue. Um, yeah, it can be that you'll save money. You have to do the math because there's the shipping, which can cost upwards of $6,000, including all the procedure on both sides. Because there's a lot of procedures. There's the shipping, of course. There's the licensing. There's the export clearing, the import clearing. There's inspections, and there's sometimes safety changes. And it can be a drawn out process, but it's doable. We've had people one guy. See if I can remember the story. He was given a car by his father, so he absolutely wanted it. And when the car came in, they had changed the law so that you couldn't bring a car from tax-free from a country other than your own that was made in a country. So, and he just left it in storage for a few years, and then they changed the law back to where it was, and he cleared it and delivered it. That's not something that you want to go through. For most people don't. But there are some things, especially vans, that are not available in Israel. And you want like a Honda van or a Toyota van that's not sold here. The advantage comes when you bring in a used car, because cars depreciate quickly in America, and that's what they're using to begin with as the base of the taxes. Eventually, they don't. Eventually, they're going to be using what's called a Levy Yitzchak, which is like a blue book, but in Israel. So, but still, used cars depreciate quickly. So instead of paying, as you can see below, 80% tax on $20,000, it may be once it's a few years old, you can bring it. You'll pay it on $10,000. So that's worth considering. And there's no. You can bring in also really old cars, older than 30 years, and that's called a collector's car. But there's limits as to when you can drive it. So an Oleh pays about 80% tax, and that's including the VAT and the sales tax and all that, as opposed to a regular citizen paying over 120%. A returning resident just pays the same taxes as an Israeli, but they have the advantage of being able to bring in a depreciated car up to 4 years old, whereas a regular citizen can only bring a car up to 2 years old. Okay, that's vehicles. Packing. So usually there are only two options. There used to be something called partial pack, where we would pack only the delicates and the furniture. Pretty much that's been abandoned, so it's either all or nothing. No packing is an issue because of the business about not being able to insure it for all risk, unless everything is inspected and repacked as necessary, which means it's going to be packing anyways. Full packing includes that service already. So if full packing means they're packing everything, but you've already packed some of the goods that you're shipping. So if you leave them open, then our packers can inspect them, repack as necessary, and it'll be fully insured for all risk. Okay, so that's that. I regret not being able to see anybody or to see feedback. Manjit, are you able to see comments? No. Okay. Again, just to review some of the other stuff, FCL is full container load, not necessarily full, but it is exclusive, and it's direct from your home to the port, and from your port, from the ship port, receiving port to your home. Quicker and more predictable, especially if you're using Zim. The less than container load are consolidated with other people's goods. Hopefully, your goods are either crated or palletized, and you get 28 days of free storage. And you can, and also it's not expensive to leave it longer than that. But it is slower and less predictable, both because it has to be combined with other people's goods, and because it tends to go on non-direct voyages, what's called transshipments that drop in one country and then pick up from with another boat. So, okay, that's that. Customs clearing. We do that. We, from the very beginning, we get copies of the documents that you have available, like an American passport. And then on this side, once you get your identity papers here, we use those for clearing. And in almost every case, it's without your having to go to customs. Once in a while, if there's some bizarre thing going on, like you brought in some high-end art and they dispute the values that you used for it. But in general, for Olim, people who are not paying taxes, there are very few inspections. Unless if they suspect that there's a motorized bike or scooter, that's a red flag. Yeah. Or if you list on your clearing list that you brought in 20 boxes of Cheetos or something, some kind of food, so that's also going to be a red flag. Like you could bring in a small amount, a personal amount of whatever your favorite foods are, and whiskeys. Wine doesn't usually ship very well unless it's mevushal, unless it's cooked, and then it can be shipped, but also a limited amount is tax-free. Okay. Delivery includes first waiting for the trucker to call you down, so you can, if it's a container, to see that it's sealed, and then they bring the goods in. They or you fill in what's called a bingo sheet, just like bingo, where you're listing the numbers of the items. You or they are listing the numbers of the items that are coming in. One of you has to do it, so if you prefer, that's fine. Otherwise, they'll do it. They have to do it. So you have to. If something happens and you see they're not doing it, that's unusual, but it could happen. So you have to remind them, or you have to do it yourself. So they'll put the goods where you want them. They'll unwrap used furniture and new stuff. They'll not unwrap unless you give them, a tip or something. And they're going to also take away the gross debris. That's something where oftentimes you can just call the city, or we call the city. Stuff is packed and all the debris is put out to the street. And we assemble also simple use furniture up to a single table and a couple of beds. And we can, in some instances, assemble much more complicated things. But it's probably better to use Midrag as an online rating system for pretty much every service provider in every city. And it really works well. Sometimes the top-rated people are not available. Sometimes they are. We're just getting a new air conditioner here in the office, and we use the guy from Midrag, and he's amazingly responsive. Because part of the deal with Midrag is you commit to giving the guy a review afterwards, and you're reviewing both efficiency and price and manner. Okay. If the delivery is going to be difficult, if there's going to be overhanging trees, and you have a whole container so it's high up, that could be a problem. Or if you're in a high-rise building, and the parking lot is over another parking lot, so there's a limit to 4 tons, and your shipment is 6 tons, that could be occasion using a shuttle, which means transferring your goods a little at a time to smaller trucks and bringing them that way. Or if they can only park, let's say you don't find parking, or they don't find parking, and they have to bring things more than 25 yards, that could be an additional charge as well. Yeah. Okay. Delivery. Okay. Difficult access we explained already. Other things are if the elevator in your building if there is no elevator and they have to bring it above the second floor, or if the elevator is 100 years old and doesn't take more than 150 kilos, so that might be a problem. It will be a problem. Or if there's a weight-limited street or parking, like above a parking lot, and or if there are very narrow streets, like there are some streets, like in Nachlaot or in the old city of Jerusalem or in the old city of Tzfat, where big trucks cannot get through, or in Manhattan, for example. Not that but they just have restrictions on the size of the trucks that can go there. So that would occasion using a shuttle or a very long carry, but usually a shuttle. Also, overhanging doorways, if there's a problem. But there are solutions to all of this. It's pretty rare that we say, sorry, we can't deliver this under any circumstances. There's usually a crane that can get it in, either an arm crane, which can go up several stories, or a ladder crane, which can go up to 5 stories and cost far cheaper. So those are always options. Possible extras that we anticipate according to your situation. Storage past a few days for a full container, or past 28 days for a shared container. And in security inspections, customs inspections. Hold on 1 second. Francis, I'm in can you call Shani? Want me to call Shani? Okay, sorry. Getting a call from reality here. Okay. So what would occasion a customs or security inspection? Either something that might appear to be a electric scooter or bike, or if the customs list is not filled out properly. I mean, we guide you through that, but eventually it's your choice on what to write, and that's about it. I mean, also we've had one of the customs inspection I mentioned earlier was a seeds. Somebody had some seeds, and they took apart the whole shipment to get rid of and destroy the seeds. And the other thing was this guy he was a piano repairer or restorer, and he just mentioned that he was bringing in a used piano, and they did an x-ray and they found he had 12 used pianos. So they were very nice to him. They just said, get a business license, bring these in, and they let him through without any penalties. He paid some taxes, and he was indignant at the delay, so he wrote to the Prime Minister's office back when the Prime Minister had nothing else to do, and they answered him very quickly and said, we checked on it and it's being handled. So Olim have, at least with certain of the government offices, have special status, and they want to treat you nicely. They want you to come. It doesn't always apply to everybody else. Some people might think you're absolutely nuts for leaving the ease and comfort of America, and will treat you as such. So other extra charges possible are extra heavy items. If you have a safe or a Sub-Zero that's over 300 pounds, or more than 50 boxes of books, there are surcharges. So all of this is listed on our website and in our in our contract, in our agreement. A shuttle, again, if they can't get close enough to use a big truck or a container, then they have to transfer to smaller trucks. A long carry, more than 25 meters, if they can't find parking, or if you can't reserve them parking. And stair carry above second floor. And there, oh, actually, I do remember something that couldn't be delivered. There was just in the last few weeks there are some like the kind of Dutch style houses here, where there's like a very small floor. Each floor is like, I don't know, 300 square feet, and there's stairs between them, and sometimes the stairs are exceptionally narrow. So we couldn't carry up it was called it wasn't a Nordic track, but it was something like that. It was some very high end, very heavy, and very big electric walkway. What are those things called? Halichon in Hebrew. And our normal crews couldn't get it up, and we brought in a piano crew that is accustomed to carrying 450-pound pianos, and they couldn't do it. So he ended up leaving it in his living room and getting his exercise there. Okay, and cranes are great. Cranes are make life easier for everybody, for the movers and for you, because you don't have to worry about dinging the walls or the ceilings or your furniture. It goes if there's an accessible window, big picture window, or porch, it just gets right to there, and it's great. So that's a good thing. The current situation, there is no current situation that that's influencing making more problems. There have been for the last years, starting with COVID, with Corona, which made for untold numbers of delays, unpredictable shipments, lacking containers, no trucks, no teams. In America, I'm speaking. Here, it didn't affect it so much. So, but now it's not something caused by anything that's happening now. But if you're using a transshipment, like one of the Chinese shipping lines that drops things off in somewhere in Europe and then it picks it up with another vessel, so those are by nature unpredictable. Sometimes in the Midwest, especially like St. Louis, and not Chicago, but other smaller parts of the Midwest, smaller cities in the Midwest. So containers might be unavailable. So you might have to find a way to truck things into a place, or wait extra time, store stuff, and then put it into a container when it's available. Again, storage is always a possibility. If there's a problem with clearing customs, it's pretty infrequent that there are problems with that. There are things called bunker surcharge and green fuel surcharge, which we include in our price. Some companies list it as a separate thing, as if it's optional. Our policy is, if it's not optional, we include it in the price. If it's possible, then we'll list it as possible. But if it's certain, why would we want to, unless we were trying to deceive our customers to believing that our prices were lower, and this is just stuff that's not optional, but extra. So general rate increases happen from time to time, and that would appear, unless we know about it in advance, would appear as a separate charge. We're happy to help you decipher, compare, and match apples with apples, other people's quotes. Sometimes there's ambiguity. You have to read it. You have to decide if you're reading it as one line when it goes to a different line, or it's two different lines, and so it's like, deciphering the syntax so that to your advantage, and then you have to ask questions to make sure that what they mean. So we work hard to make our quotes and our contracts unambiguous. If you refer a friend afterwards, we give a discount. Not an amazing discount because our profit margins are not amazing, but something. So we've been doing this since 1979. For the first 15 years, just appliances. After that, relocations. We're also doing real estate. We have realtors in pretty much every part of the country who are beholden to us because we send them leads. And if there's any issues, and they're people that have a strong track record, and we're accountable. They're accountable to us as well, so that's an advantage. Um, and we're all olim, not olim chadashim, not new. We don't have any new olim. Actually, we do have in our marketing staff we have people who are not even olim yet, but they're on their way. Yeah. Okay. And this is our contact information. We'll send you a copy of all this stuff, of this PowerPoint, and these are contact information. This is, and you don't have to use there's no extension number, so you can just dial the number, and whoever's available will pick up, and we can transfer between ourselves. Sorry, I wasn't able to see. Maybe if Manjit, our Indian editor, is still online, he can tell me if there are and where I can find. We're using a new platform. This is the first time we've used YouTube as a platform. So usually I'm able to see comments, but if anybody does have any comments or questions, so please do send them to us, and we'll answer them as quickly as we can. Okay, thanks very much, and all the best. $80, my goodness.